This is an Electrolux Ergorapido Lithium vacuum cleanery battery powered thing, which of course came out of the trash today actually. And the issue with it is that the only thing it does when you try and turn it on is shout at you and give you a red LED. And I've noticed that the fan motor seems to be completely seized in it. You cannot even turn it by force. So the guy at the trash place said, the previous owner had said that yeah, the battery's bad in it, but I don't really think that's the case, because you can hear it making a rather valiant effort at actually turning around. There's an actual little physical thump in the unit as it's trying to turn the motor, but nothing's happening. And I did notice while cleaning the brush thing out that it might have had a bit of a dog pee odour to it. Nothing major, but it might be a case of this has gotten liquid damage in some way. But more likely than that, I would think that it's gotten just something trashed into the fan assembly mechanically. So we're going to have to take this thing apart and see if we can rectify it, because this thing, I mean, it looks very fresh. This thing, it seems like one of those things that you'd give your grandma and she'd never use, and this has just been sitting around for years and years. Well, it's an 18-volt lithium, apparently, so you wouldn't expect it to have been sitting around for too long, because I don't think 18-volt lithium stuff has really been popular for a long time, and we even have a QR code for all the smartphone-y fancies. So let's just try and rip this thing apart. I've been into a couple of older models of these before. Shouldn't be too difficult. Yeah, shut up. So what's the actual model number? NV180LIBRC. Do I have a date code? Nothing obvious. ZB3013. Perhaps 2013. I don't know, it looks newer than that. Yeah, let's just try and get all these screws out and see if we can make any sense out of it. There seem to be torques 10 or 15. Alright, 6 screws, and it seems to be getting it somewhere. There we go. I just shone with some extra dust collecting, and what do we have? Well, for starters, these seem to be just standard 18650s. Little brackets. 18 volt, 1450 milliamp hours. So these are probably pretty standard tool style high current lithiums. And that's a pretty tiny motor. Looks reminiscent of a drill motor. Electronics look pretty high class actually. Some kind of processor going on there. Seems to be an ST of some sort. Yeah, but I've got to get this thing apart. Hey, this seems to be made out of rubber. Pretty nice build quality in this thing actually. I'm quite impressed thus far. I have a BMSE logic board thing, just pops out with 2 screws there and a couple of little snappers back there, and it pops out a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lithiums as you'd expect, and the motor, peel off that thing, snap off this thing, and lo and behold, the motor now turns freely. And I think we've found the issue with this thing, because we've got a pretty hardcore rub mark there, and some pretty hardcore rub marks on the fan. So how much would you be willing to bet that this thing's just going to turn on just fine and sever my hand off if I turn it on right now? Let's get a vice. Alright, let's give this a go. That's an improvement. That's properly terrifying. Properly terrifying. Wow. So it seems we've got a bit of a balance issue on this thing, because that shook the entire bench rather. Jesus. Seems the bearings are a bit rough on this thing. I think the fan might actually have migrated outwards. The entire fan assembly has moved this way a bit, because if I look down here in the little slit, I can see that it's not perfectly straight on, and the actual fan mount is showing quite a bit. If you just look in there, you can see that the fan is not on straight anymore, and I would believe that that little brass thing is supposed to be entirely inside of the fan assembly. I think we've got our failure mode right there. Now the question is, have the bearings taken enough of a beating to be ruined, or is it going to work fine if I just press this back down and perhaps glue it in? Only one way to find out. Right, as to come, there's no effort to push this fan down back onto its brass mount, and it seems to be quite a lot more balanced now. So let's give it another shot at running and hoping that it won't come flying off in my face. Here we go. Sure. It's nowhere near as bad, but this thing doesn't sound too healthy now, does it? The microphone probably won't convey properly how scary that is, but it's like having an angle grinder with no eyewear. Jesus. Yeah, it doesn't sound too healthy. Certainly doesn't sound too healthy, but I think for a freebie, if I just glue this down and let it run until there's just nothing left of the bearings, I'll be happy with it. It won't seem much used by me anyway. So yeah, let's just do that. If you look really closely, you can see the actual root cause of the issue. The rotor is cracked there and there. So, we've got a third crack there. So it's just been unable to keep enough pressure on this brass bearing holdy thing for it to work properly. And that's why it's let go and finally ceased. So that's the cause. But it doesn't seem to be cracked all the way to the end. I'd wager this is still going to be fine as long as I take steps to ensure that the cracks don't get any worse. So it's going to take an extra bit of glue. Yeah, that explains everything now, doesn't it? Bit of an odd issue. I wonder if the cause is for cracks, or if the cracks are a symptom of the rotor just hitting against the shell and vibrating. That's a difficult call to make, because you wouldn't expect this to just crack for no reason. But you also wouldn't expect it to just slide off for no reason. A real mystery. Oh well. Alright, so what I've done now is I dislodged the rotor again, and I can show it because I'm doing it really fast. And I just put some normal super glue as well into the cracks as I could, and now I'm just using these little toothpicks to force the rotor up, which causes it to clamp down more against the axle. And I also put some glue between the axle and the fan assembly, hoping to stir it up a bit. I'm a bit skeptical about this, but I was out of epoxy, and I'm afraid that epoxy would be a bit too tacky to really make it work. If this repair fails, thankfully taking it apart this far is just a very minor procedure. So if this fails, I could just get some epoxy, which I'm going to do anyway, and try and do like an epoxy ring around it, and possibly bury a little bit of metal wire in it to stir it up and really allow it to make proper contact to the brass fitting thing. But I'm going to let this dry now for a considerable amount of time, and we'll see how it pans out. Okay, so I decided to take the safe route rather than the dodgy one I was considering earlier. So, while the glue was drying, which it probably still is, I took and cut out a piece of just normal experiment wire and wrapped it very tightly around the centre hub of the fan assembly. Prior to doing that, I took my soldering iron and just dabbed a few grooves into it to guide the wire around, and wrapped the wire around exactly 2 turns, taking a lot of care to ensure that that's actually the case in order to avoid unbalance. And then I took and just soldered it together all the way around. So then I 2 turns of wire soldered together very solidly around the centre of this axle. And that's just applying some extra pressure and keeping everything steady to make sure that we don't suffer the same failure again. After putting the wire in place, I also took the soldering iron and just dabbed it down slightly to push some plastic over the actual wire to prevent it from slipping and flying off. And I think this is going to be pretty sturdy. I think I'm going to just take a slight amount of hot glue and wrap it around here to make it a bit extra sturdy and give back some of the aerodynamic shape of this, because this is very rough at the moment. But yeah, I was just too skeptical about the just normal express gel glue to trust it, but I think this is going to turn out quite well. This is solidly melted into the plastic. And there we go. Just the tiniest dab of hot glue. And to make this adhere extra well, I actually used my hot air gun over there to preheat the rotor very slowly, just blowing 100-degree air over it to just make it a bit 40-50 degrees warm. That makes all the difference when you're trying to seat hot glue onto something. And then I just applied a dab in the middle and basically let it droop down, kind of doing a bit of mechanical work, spinning around with the hot glue gun nozzle in order to make it move. And it's really taking the edge off of everything, and it's looking pretty even and nice. This might turn out a pretty good repair actually, as long as the hot glue manages to survive the centrifugal action. But yeah, I've got good hopes. The surface of this area is very coarse since I used it with a soldering iron. Oh, I guess we'll see. Just a few more minutes for me until I can try and turn this thing. Alright, it's had some time to cool down. Now it's back to room temperature, and I've installed some goggles, so let's give this a bit of a spin. It's going to be exciting no matter what. Here we go. It's certainly turning. It does sound as if it's rubbing against something, but I don't know. Could just be the bearings making a bit of a harsh noise. They seem to be a bit wonky. I'm not entirely certain whether or not they're actually using a motor which has bearings designed to cope with the fact that this motor is producing quite a bit of suction trying to get the fan assembly to move off this way. So it might be a bit worn out like that. I think I'm still going to try and lube up the lower end bearing of this motor. I can't access the top one since I would have to take the fan assembly off, and I don't dare try and do that since it's just a press fit. I'd have to really tear it off, and no, not going to do that. But beyond that, it does look quite a bit better than it did when it came. Oh, there we go, kind of assembled back together. I still need to figure out how to charge this thing, if it requires some extra circuitry in the charging station or something like that, or if I can just hook 21 volts across it. But let's see if it sucks, or if we've failed. That seems to work pretty well. And what about the big handle thing? This isn't too bad. Not too bad at all, it's even got headlights. Ha. Oh, check that out. It's got a power setting. I had to figure out how to charge it. I also got a bit of an experimental pinout going on here. Measuring on this unit, the lowest voltage from the circuit is here, and so that's what I'm going to assume to be ground. And that pin, as well as this one, are paralleled up and going to this pin on the base suction thing. So I'm pretty certain this is just ground for everything. This pin and this is going to be some kind of sense pin for something. And this pin on the base is going straight to this pin. So I'm assuming that's where the actual positive charge lead goes. And this one's got a high voltage on it, and it's going off to somewhere inside this thing. So this is probably what's powering all the stuff over here in the brush head. So I'm going to try and just apply plus and negative about 21 volts or so, harshly current limited to this, and see if it goes up in smoke. Alright, so I've got 21 volts current limited to something like 100 milliamps connected to the belly of the beast. So let's see if it'll do anything. Yeah, that looks pretty good. It's making a ticking noise and it's jumping off the current limiter, so I'll just crank it up. A bit of googling later, I found out that the original charger for this seems to be just a standard issue DC wall wart at 25 volts and 500 milliamps. So we've now got 25 volts going into this. So if we're lucky, all the charging smart is just already situated in there, and we won't even have to think anymore about it. So let's give it a go at 25. Yeah, and that's drawing a healthy 450 milliamps. I'd say that's a pretty good win. Now I just need to put a DC plug on this because I've got no plans for buying an actual charging station for this. Alright, so here's the inside of a base unit. It also comes apart quite easily, although you have to take off the vacuum heady thing in order to separate it because you've got some leads going through there. You can also see how this unit really can't have seen much use because this is a pretty dodgy hinge mechanism they've got going here, just plastic against plastic, and it hasn't even worn through the colour of anything. So yeah, I'm betting this thing was a gift to grandma. She never liked it. Anyway, let's just to check out the wiring here. So I estimated on the main vacuum unit that this was the charger, this was the negative terminal, this was the ID terminal I called it. It's shorted by 300 and something ohm resistor to ground, and I call this one positive, or supply out of the battery. But it seems to be a bit cryptic. The charging is pretty obvious because we've got this little thin red wire here going straight to the positive terminal in the base, and the same goes for the negative on the charging. We've got the negative wire going into this splice here, and then it goes straight to the negative terminal. So yeah, we've got charging there. But it also seems as if this pin is the power supply, the one I labelled ID, to the brush motor and LED assembly, because we've got a pretty thick wire going out from it and down into the brush head, and this seems to be an interface terminal for the buttons. And it's a bit curious how they've done this, because the buttons just run off this 2-conductor wire, and one of them goes straight to ground, and the other one goes to this terminal, which also goes down into the head. So I figure this probably is some kind of actual active data line, because they've got 2 buttons going on the same line, and they probably have head identification going as well. So this pin probably handles detection of the actual vacuum head and the buttons at the same time. So if you were to disconnect this, the vacuum would know that there's no head connection, and it wouldn't allow you to change the settings because you can only run the handle itself on full power. As I think there are some more traditional ways you could go about actually interfacing this. You could have 2 buttons short and one one way and the other one shorting the other way through a diode or something, and some resistive thing for identifying the head, but I wouldn't be surprised if they've actually just chosen to use a microcontroller for it, since they cost nothing. Anyway, with this I'm just gonna solder on a little DC plug to a couple of the pins here. Probably have to mount it on this piece of plastic, which is the front, in order to prevent it getting all horrible if you try to take it apart again, since the lower half just pops off like a straight piece of plastic like that. There's nothing connecting to it, which is nice. So yeah, I'm gonna have to think about that for a moment, and I'm curious how they've done the buttons. Alright, I have to satisfy my curiosity about this button board, and I'm happy to see they've actually gone a more traditional route rather than just throwing a micro on there. And it's really basic how they've done it. So you've got the ground coming in on the top pin there, and it just runs straight to each end of the buttons, and then we've got two resistors. One, I believe, 472 and one 1002, so what's that, 4.7k and 10k, stuff like that. And we're running those straight back out the positive pin with a little bypass cap sitting there, so they're just putting out two different voltage levels depending on which button you've pressed. Simple and effective, I like it. So there's probably going to be just a resistor in the head to tell it when that's connected. Now, it turns out I was completely wrong on that one, because in the head we've got the brown wire going to a micro switch. And the purpose of that switch seems to be get triggered by this arm here, which seems to identify whether or not a brush is inserted. Or it could possibly be in order to detect whether or not a brush is jammed. But let's see. Yeah, the switch gets triggered when this device is pressed in this manner. So yeah, it could be either, really. It detects whether or not something is here, whether or not it's a pressure to detect the brush, or whether or not it's full. Yeah, I suppose it's a bit of a mystery still. But that's easy to figure out once I actually reassemble it and try and use it by just taking the brush out. But there we go, that's all the smarts of that unit. The little LED board there is just hooked up in parallel with a motor, it seems. So there's nothing fancy going on with the motors. A cute little belt drive mechanism like that. These are probably going to be scarce and horrible to find in a few years' time. They probably already are. One date in this thing was copyrighted 2012 at least, and this one might have a stamp as well, actually. Yeah, this one's got 1413, so that's week 14, 2013, probably manufacture date, so it's about 2-3 years old, something like that. Not too bad for a freebie, but certainly bad that it didn't last more than that long. Oh, hang on, it seems I was entirely wrong again. It seems the purpose of this switch is to get pressed down by this button. That button initiates this mechanism, which pushes this metal edge thing down against the brush. I've got no idea what the purpose of that mechanism might be. Perhaps some kind of brush cleaning mode, but just keeps running the brush while you press that. I guess we'll find out, but that's certainly cryptic. Oh, there we go. DC plug properly mounted. Had to do it on the underside since it just wasn't feasible mounting it on the other side, since it's basically just a giant handheld vacuum cleaner mount. But there it is. Shouldn't obstruct anything. These DC plugs are really nice because you can basically just thread an M12 hole, screw them in and fill up with hot snot, and they're never going to go anywhere. So just run some Cat 5 round here, round there, and just uglily piggybacked it onto the old charger leads. So that should be pretty okay. I just need to figure out how to get it back together with the slack. There isn't really room for any kind of connector, so it's going to be a bit of a bother, but I think it'll be okay. Right, so everything mounted back together. And we've got something hooked up into our new charge plug, so let's just flip the switch and see if it'll do anything. That looks pretty okay. Yep, that's looking happy. There we go. Now I wonder if this thing is going to charge over 24 volts, because that would make getting a new power supply for this quite a bit easier. Yeah, it's going a bit slower, but it seems to work, so I can just use some generic 24 volt supply to recharge this thing. It's probably going to work fine up to a couple of volts above 25 as well. Yeah, I'd say 27 or so is probably a decent upper limit. Haven't checked any date sheets or anything, but it seems to be happy enough. So let's see what this switch thing is supposed to do. Nothing if you do it like that. Let's just see if this still works. Medium power. Okay, it's clearly doing something with how it's driving the motor down there, but I've got no idea what it's trying to accomplish. Perhaps it's driving it a bit harder in order to clean the brush, because that's obviously lowering a blade onto the brush, and you probably don't want to do that at full force. So there you go. Electrolux, what's it called? Ergorapido Lithium fixed. Thank you for watching. Cheerio. This is an Electrolux Ergorapido Lithium vacuum cleanery battery powered thing, which of course came out of the trash today actually. And the issue with it is that the only thing it does when you try and turn it on is shout at you and give you a red LED. And I've noticed that the fan motor seems to be completely seized in it. You cannot even turn it by force. So the guy at the trash place said, the previous owner had said that yeah, the battery's bad in it, but I don't really think that's the case, because you can hear it making a rather valiant effort at actually turning around. There's an actual little physical thump in the unit as it's trying to turn the motor, but nothing's happening. And I did notice while cleaning the brush thing out that it might have had a bit of a dog pee odour to it. Nothing major, but it might be a case of this has gotten liquid damage in some way. But more likely than that, I would think that it's gotten just something trashed into the fan assembly mechanically. So we're going to have to take this thing apart and see if we can rectify it, because this thing, I mean, it looks very fresh. This thing, it seems like one of those things that you'd give your grandma and she'd never use, and this has just been sitting around for years and years. Well, it's an 18 volt lithium, apparently, so you wouldn't expect it to have been sitting around for too long, because I don't think 18 volt lithium stuff has really been popular for a long time, and we even have a QR code for all the smartphone-y fancies. So let's just try and rip this thing apart. I've been into a couple of older models of these before. Shouldn't be too difficult. Yeah, shut up. So what's the actual model number? NV180LIBRC. Do I have a date code? Nothing obvious. ZB3013. Perhaps 2013. I don't know, it looks newer than that. Yeah, let's just try and get all these screws out and see if we can make any sense out of it. There seem to be torques 10 or 15. Alright, 6 screws, and it seems to be getting it somewhere. There we go. Now just show with some extra dust collecting, and what do we have? Well, for starters, these seem to be just standard 18650s.